Good morning, kindergarten. It's Mrs. Cummins. Happy Tuesday. This is our third week of online learning, and I'm sure you all received a little surprise in your bag yesterday. So that's from Mrs. Cummins because you've been doing really good with the work. I've been seeing some of my friends on the Google Meets, which is so great to see. So I thought maybe I'd give you a little surprise. So we are going to start our day off with our welcome song. So let's sing our welcome song and then we'll move on to our memory work, okay? Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? How are you today? I'm fine, I hope you are too. I'm fine, I hope you are too. I'm fine, I hope you are too. I hope you are fine today. Turn to your neighbor and shake their hand. Turn to your neighbor and shake their hand. Turn to your neighbor and shake their hand. Shake their hand today. Good job, kindergarten. All right, we have a new memory work today, and it is John 14, verse 6. So Mrs. Cummins is going to read it first, and then we'll talk about what it means, and then we'll read it one more time, okay? So let's show my camera over here. So let's do it together. Are you ready? John 14, verse 6, and Mrs. Cummins will read it first. Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So this is Jesus talking, and he is saying that he is the way. So he is the way to heaven, right? Because Jesus has died on the cross for all our sins, and he is telling us that he is the way to heaven. And he also mentions that we cannot come to God except through Jesus, right? Because God has sent his son so that he could deliver us from all our sins. And then we may meet God someday in heaven if we believe, right? So let's do it one more time, okay? John 14, verse 6. Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Good. So we're going to practice that for the month of May. So right now we're going to move on to our Bible story. And we've been talking a lot about Saul, and now today we're going to talk about Saul and how he disobeys God. Disobey is a big word, and it means that he did not listen and he did not follow what God has told him to do. So sometimes your mommy or your daddy might say, you have disobeyed me, which means you have not listened or you have not obeyed them. So we're going to talk about Saul. Saul, he was 30 years old when he became king. He was a good king, and he helped the Israelites fight their battles. He was humble, and he listened to God and did what God told him to do. The people liked their new king. Whenever they saw them, they shouted for him. They sang songs about his victories. This made Saul very happy, but it made him proud too. Pretty soon he thought he could be a king without God. Do you think you could be a king without God? I don't think so. God gives us the wisdom, right? After Saul had been king for 2 years, he did a most wicked thing. It all happened out because of a war with the Philistines. Saul had chosen 3,000 men of Israel to be his soldiers. That is a lot of soldiers. 1,000 of the men led by Saul's son Jonathan. They were sent to Gibeah. Saul kept 2,000 men with him in Michmash and in the Mount of Bethel. Jonathan and his men fought against the Philistines, and won the battle. Then Saul blew his trumpet throughout all the land to tell the people that Saul had killed the Philistines in battle. When the rest of the Philistines heard about the battle, they made ready to fight against Saul. They came up with 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen. There were as many soldiers as the sand on the seashore. They came and they camped close to Saul's army. Now the soldiers of Israel were afraid. They ran away to hide. Some hid in the caves, some in the woods. Others hid behind rocks or in cisterns. Some of the men crossed the Jordan River and went to the land of Gad and Gilead. But Saul was still in Gilgal, and the rest of his men followed him trembling. Samuel had promised Saul that he would join him in Gilgal. In 7 days, Samuel planned to burn an offering on the altar to God. Saul waited and waited, but Samuel did not come. Many of Saul's men left him because they were afraid. Finally, Saul told his servant to bring the burnt offering and the peace offerings. And Saul burned the sacrifices on the altar himself instead of waiting for Samuel. Do you think that was a good thing, or do you think that was not a good thing? I think it was not a good thing. This was wrong, for the priests were the only ones who were supposed to bring sacrifices on the altar. Saul was not a priest, he was a king. Saul had just finished the sacrifice when Samuel came. Saul went out to meet him. Samuel said, "What have you done?" "You didn't come when you were promised." Saul answered, "My men were running away from me. The Philistines were almost upon me, and I hadn't asked God for help. So I forced myself to offer the sacrifice." "You have done foolishly," Samuel said, "and you have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God." God was going to let men from your family be king in Israel forever. But now your kingdom will not last. Since you have disobeyed God, he is going to look for a man after his own heart. He will appoint him to be the prince over his people. Samuel left Saul at Gilgal. He crossed the river Jordan and went to Gibeah. Saul gathered his men together and went out to fight. What made Saul change from a good king to a bad king? Because he was a very good king at the beginning, but then something happened. He started getting way too happy, and he was not listening to God. He became very proud, and he thought that he didn't need God, right? And how did Saul disobey God? He was waiting for somebody to do an offering, right? What was his name? Samuel. And Samuel didn't come on time, so then Saul decided to make his own offering. Was he allowed to do that? Was a king allowed to do that? No, only a priest. And what was God going to do because of Saul's disobedience? What do you think? His kingdom isn't going to last, is it? No, it's not going to last. So that was the story today about Saul's disobedience. Now here is your journal page. So you're going to make a picture of the story, and then your mom and your dad can write your sentence in a highlighter, and you would have to trace that sentence. SK, you can label 3 things on your picture, and I can't wait to see those beautiful pictures when you hand it in, okay? So remember, if you do all your work, Mrs. Cummins will send you something special in your package, right? All right, bye, kindergarten.